Hello, true duelists. It's YGO Strat's Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, where I'm going to be talking about some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years, and some of the other ones that didn't. Today's card, one of countless stop playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Type cards, and one everyone was glad to see gone, True King of all Calamities. Calamities was first released in Maximum Crisis in 2017 as a super rare, with only one reprint to date as of my making this video. Again as a super rare in Mystic Fighters in 2019. For time on the ban list, it went right from 3 and free to 0 on the March 2021 ban list, which, fun fact, was right around when I started making videos again, and was when I was still actually decent at making thumbnails. Time is the enemy, folks. A rank 9 Dark Attribute Worm type Xyz monster with 3,000 attack and defense. The materials to summon are any 2 or more level 9 monsters, and its effect reads: once per turn, quick effect, you can detach one material from this card and declare one attribute. This turn, all face-up monsters on the field become that attribute. Also, all monsters in your opponent's possession with that attribute cannot activate their effects or attack. Monsters that True Draco and True King monsters in your hand would destroy with their card effects can be chosen from your opponent's field. Calamities here is similar to Calamity in that they have damn near identical names and both stop you from playing the game in a meaningful way. So to make this video sound a little bit different from the inevitable video I make on White Dragon Archfiend Calamity King Big Dumb Fuck himself, and also because it's easier to say, I'll be referring to this card in this video as VFD. Most who know this card already call it this, and it's less syllables, so really who am I to argue? If you're curious as to why VFD is the name of choice for this card, it comes from the OCG. I believe this comes from the name of the 3 true kings that are evil, the earth, the fire, and the water ones, but yeah, it's literally right there, VFD. And fun fact, it rhymes with oh fuck me, which is exactly what you say when you see this piece of shit on the field. The card released alongside the True King monsters, broadly, a series of level 9 monsters that support various attributes, that had very limited applications all in one deck. That was to the grace of most players, that very few decks could play this, but it wouldn't be a video if people hadn't suffered, would it? The first deck to play this was True King Dinosaur. The deck already played Lithosagum regardless, because the level 9 could blow up baby dinosaurs to really get the ball rolling and comboing off, able to potentially summon 2 dinosaurs from the deck by blowing up 2 baby dinos, including a level 1 tuner in Jurak Aolo. This was important because it let the deck also access something like Trishula, which could rip apart the opponent's hand and field if going second, and of course was a second level 9 to overlay with Lithosagum. This gave the deck easy access to VFD while staying on track to make its usual plays that it wanted to regardless, and it was common to have made a Danglong along the way, the Yang Zing Synchro, that also got the deck easy access to an Infernity Barrier, which when used could let the True King Dino player float a Yang Zing monster ultimately into a Herald of the Arclight as well, because no amount of negates is ever enough. This deck's success was notable because it was one of the few that could stand up to Zodiac in its prime, and while VFD was obviously a brutal card to play against, I don't remember it receiving an abundance of hate like it would grow to in the later years. I attribute this to the fact that if True King Dinosaur went off uninterrupted, it didn't really matter whether or not they got access to VFD because you probably wouldn't be playing regardless. Things like Logia, Dolka, that 9 pillars counter trap Yang Zing, and even Ultimate Conductor's Book of Eclipse really made it hard to effectively let you play it all, didn't it? That's not to say that VFD did not get hate at this time, it's just that it was one of many things to hate about the deck. This one would come to an end with the limiting of both Dragonic Diagram and Lithosagum, and really Misk, causing it to leave the metagame. That, and you know, the advent of Master Rule 4 just taking time to ruin the game for a few years. Notably, because Master Rule 4 is in my mind equal to FTKs, because there were just so many of them in all of Master Rule 4's formats, like Gem Knight FTK, which was one of far too many that could be played in and around 2018, and notably also played VFD. Yeah, it's a staple of Gem Knight FTK, because in terms of backup plans, it really doesn't get much better. Gem Knight FTK's main game plan was to abuse Gem Knight Master Diamond's ability to copy other Gem Knight Fusion's effects, notably copying Lapis Lazuli's effect to burn the opponent, by looping the Fusion Summon of Master Diamond to burn thrice after copying Lapis Lazuli's effects, and, you know, just win the game without really meaningfully playing at all. But should the opponent have the well-timed Effect Veiler or something else to prevent the FTK, the deck could take its 2 copies of Master Diamond and overlay them to make VFD. And with the Veiler already used, you really had no worry about not letting the opponent play, because you were going to stop them from doing it. it, whether by burning them or by not letting them. What a fun deck. This one died with the limit of Master Diamond, but of course VFD moves on. It was really late 2019 and into 2020 that saw the card really seem to explode into the community at large. Very suddenly it seemed every deck had access to level 9s and would tunnel into this no matter what. It was like everyone suddenly realized all at once how many decks can have access to rank 9s if they want to. Take for example, Invoked Mechaba is a level 9, which meant that if you had the right opening hand and an Invoked engine, you could probably make this out, because Alistair and a light monster in hand can just extend into it apparently. Or Cyber Dragon could tech in a copy of Infinitrack Anchor Drill, because Anchor Drill and one of your level 5 Cyber Boys makes 2 level 9s, so boom, have a VFD. Orcust could make it by teching it into the extra deck and doing their standard Orcust plays, but instead of searching for one Fog Blade off of a Silent Boot sent to the graveyard, they'd instead search the Phantom Knight's rank up spell. Then when they did the usual revive Dingirsu to a zone that Phantom Knight's Rusty Bardish points to, they could tag and rank this up into VFD and make sure the opponent just doesn't play. And beyond even that, just casual scrubs would throw this into any deck they could. Take me for example. I played it in Mermail decks because it wasn't hard to search out Abyssmander off of Abystius, and the normal combo would often end with Abyss Megalo on field regardless, which in simple terms meant it was easy to get 2 level 7s on board, after which you could use Abyssmander's effect in Grave to banish itself, make the 2 level 7s level 9, and bada boom bada bing VFD. And at the same time I was doing that, my friend was playing Dragon Maid, which could make it by getting out Dragon Maid House and then fusion summoning Fusion Trish to serve as the 2 level 9s. Still, no deck abused this card better than the one that would ultimately see it banned, and that would be Virtual World. This was the most fitting deck to play it since it was shortened to VW, and the VW VFD is at least funny to say, and that's the only fun you can have in regards to that deck. VW was an interesting sort of mid-range deck, with the full strategy being to use their monsters to make plays using level 3s, 6s, and 9s, making for a mix of Synchro and Xyz plays. The deck didn't struggle in the slightest to pump out 3 or so level 9 Synchros per turn, and among them were 2 very notable choices. Their own native level 9 Synchro in Shen Shen can revive itself from the graveyard by banishing 2 monsters, and of course Cloud Castle, an older level 9 generic Synchro that on summon could revive a level 9 monster from your graveyard, which meant there was no struggle for them to make not just 1 copy of VFD, but 2, because you make 1, detach its material with its own effect to declare anything to just shut off the opponent's hand traps if you'd like, summon a second Cloud Castle, and then revive the detached material for a second VFD. Isn't that fun? And you might be thinking, well, why would you need 2 of them? Well, what if the opponent drew Imperm and then used it to try and let themselves play the game of Yu-Gi-Oh? Then you wouldn't be meaningfully winning with Virtual World, would you? So you make a second one, and then suddenly this deck is brutal to go against when going second, because the only reliable way to out this card is to draw Forbidden Droplet Exactly, a card that was rocking like $100 price point as a secret rare at one point, and it just, what a fun time. What a great deck to experience. Can you tell? Can you hear my smile right now? Ultimately, this led to it being banned, and that was very much deserved. I don't think anyone really liked VFD. Like, some people probably like the salt it mined from dumbasses like me, but the overwhelming majority would agree that it wasn't really fun to play it, it was just too good not to. VFD's effect is insanely strong. As mentioned, this is a lingering effect, which means that once it resolves, it's applied for the turn. There's no negating it after the resolution to save you, meaning that it demands a response on activation, and there's only so many meaningful ways to interact with it because of that. It being a quick effect also meant that you could use it in the standby phase, which would make something like Effect Veiler or Dark Ruler No More useless, and when you took into account what possession actually means in Yu-Gi-Oh, the card only gets more absurd. Possession in Yu-Gi-Oh means any card on your field, in your hand, in your deck, your extra deck, your graveyard, your banished pile, monsters that are currently treated as Xyz materials are in your possession and are negated by this card, and even monsters in the midst of being summoned to the field. Yeah, that weird super state where the monster's in purgatory because you summoned it and the opponent chained like Logia to negate the summon, and then you activate Psyframe Gamma because you want to let your summon go through, but it's like, well, do you control that monster at this point? point yet because it's on your field because you're trying to summon it, but the summon's being negated, but you're negating the negate, so where's that monster? Don't worry about it, friend. It's in your possession. And if it were hypothetically activating its effect under VFD, nope, because it's also in your possession. To be clear, if you're curious about that situation, you can use the Gamma since the monster summon has not resolved and therefore is not counted as being on the field yet, at least as I understand it. And regardless, it's useless under VFD, and that's what we're talking about. There isn't a place in the game where your monster with the declared attribute is able to use its effect, which means if you're playing a dark deck and VFD calls dark and you send a monster to the graveyard with Foolish Burial to try and at least do something, the response from VFD is not only no, but it's also fuck you, and you don't get to do anything with monsters for the entire turn with that attribute. This can help the controller of VFD to not only protect themselves by calling, like, say, fire to protect themselves from ash, and of course ruin the duel for the opponent, because if they're playing a deck with mostly, or God forbid, only one attribute, it's game over. It affects so many avenues of play that make for the least interesting duels you've ever seen, and put bluntly, I am ecstatic that it is banned and on principle distrust VU players by and large. Overall, True King of all Calamities, or VFD, is a brutally good card, being so generic and easy to summon, and allowing for a complete shutdown of any monster effect on the field, and potentially an entire collection of cards that your opponent has on them to be played, from their deck to their extra deck and beyond. It completely shuts down a majority of games it's in, and made for quite often, like I said, just the least interactive Yu-Gi-Oh! Outside of an FTK, which not only was this a part of, but the meme was that it was an FTK in and of itself anyways. Because if you don't get to activate monster effects or declare attacks, you really don't get to do a whole lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! I can never see this card coming back because this is plain and simple toxic, and I choose to believe Konami when they said that the shareholders want the game to be better. So whether it's by the power of the economy or capitalism or shareholders, whatever you want to call it, this card is gone for good, and I'm glad it's not coming back. Fuck VFD. And so that's our look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, True King of all Calamities. Stay tuned for our next video, and feel free to suggest some cards to review or what type of video you'd like to see. Don't forget to like, and as always, subscribe to YGO Strats to impress your smoking Italian wife, and so you too can be a true duelist.